Hello, and welcome to another exciting episode of Clutching Her Pearls. I'm your host, Marie Hale, with my fearless co-host, Miss Susie Shattuck.
Oh,
Hopefully she's feeling fearless today because we are about to dive in deep with Kristen Donnelly. And we're going to be talking about some things that you may have experienced. Exhaustion, hopefully self-care, industrial complex, boundaries, and basically we're going to talk about letting go of normal and why it's not coming back. Kristen Donnelly, or as she's otherwise known, the Good Doctor, is a TEDx speaker, international empathy educator, and researcher with 2 decades of experience in helping people understand the beauty in differences and the sheer power in inclusivity. All of her relationships, not all her relationships, she's not that difficult, but all relationships in general take work, personal and professional alike. However, somehow people are just starting to figure that out. The Good Doctors are passionate about serving you and those around you to be deeper, fuller humans. She is one of the Good Doctors of Abbey Research, the COO of their parent company, and an unapologetic nerd for stories of change. Welcome to the geekdom, Kristen.
Oh my gosh, it's such an honor to be here. Thank you guys so much.
So we are not going to pull any punches today.
Good. There's no time. The
There's
world's
no-
on fire.
Thank you. I've been saying this and everybody's like, I don't know, feels okay. Things are not okay. Everybody will tell you that they are exhausted.
Mm-hmm.
And I will tell you that we are going out less, probably going to bed earlier, and not necessarily having more on our plates now than we did pre-pandemic. It just looks a lot different now.
Okay.
That's my estimation. I could be wrong. You can tell me whenever I'm full of shit because I'm totally open to that feedback. When we're looking at the level of exhaustion that is overtaking us and our families and our society, help us understand a little bit where that stems from.
This is an excellent question, and there's 2 answers. So right now, in particular, the exhaustion, the like, oh my God, do I have to get out of bed? The I cannot do another day of Zoom. I cannot, whatever, stems entirely from the fact that we've been in communal trauma for almost 2 years, and that especially in the United States, we have not ever been shown a path to grief or how to process any of that trauma, or that we're even allowed to say we're in trauma. And we have not as much talked about loss in the present tense as we keep pretending it's entirely in the past. We are still losing time. We are still losing dreams. We are still losing relationships. We still need to grieve what should have been. And we spent so much time in 2020, especially, kind of mocking the people who were sad that their weddings got moved, or the high schoolers that couldn't go to prom, or, like, suck it up, buttercup, let's put it in perspective. Trauma's not comparable.
Right.
And we kept making the mistake that it was. And now we're just so obsessed with getting back to normal. And the problem is that normal is just a setting on a tumble dryer. There's no such thing as normal. So how can we go back?
Yeah. And
hegemony exists. Normal doesn't.
Correct. And normal is the decisions that we make all the time to reach hegemony. And so we can make different ones to create a new hegemony. And all humans are in forward motion all the time. Culture is in forward motion. Society is in forward motion. So I think that's one reason. So let's put that, the COVID of it all in a box.
Right. And can I, before we go on to the next one, don't lose it though. One of the things that I just love hearing you say that, because I started speaking on grief in 2019. I had lost my husband in 2016 or 2017. I had lost my best friend in 2018. Both of them were in my business, and I had to grieve on brand. And I said at some point, like I do, this is bullshit. I'm going to go tell everybody because nobody talks about grief like it's
Mhm.
contagious. And so we are coming from a society that one pretends like grief is never going to happen to them and that we're all
Mhm.
going to make it out of here alive, which is bonkers to me. But two, that when the pandemic hit and I started looking around and saying to everyone, oh, this is grief. I know this. I know this emotion that you're having.
Yeah.
It was incredibly difficult to help people understand that not only is it not comparable, and it's not just the people who lost actual humans,
Yeah.
which has its own grief, but that it was this compound grief of unending loss is loss, right? Like that's the
Mhm.
end of it. But we kept lying to ourselves and telling ourselves it might come back. It's almost like kept us in a deeper trauma cycle because we kept waiting and waiting as opposed to being able to drop it in grief.
Yeah, and we kept being told it's just 2 weeks lockdown. Just wear your masks until you get immunized. Now just do this until you get the booster and an international narrative. It's a global pandemic and we've had individual responses. And so this will continue to happen. The next steps will continue to evolve for as long as, medical professionals tell us this, as long as there is inequity in terms of access to immunizations. And so, there is we keep pretending, especially the privilege of the West, that it's done. And I'm talking to friends in Malawi that are possibly going to get their very first shot in June. So like but people travel and move and breathe and live and have their being everywhere on this planet. So it's one of those things I tell people. I said I got the privilege to give a TEDx in Farmingdale, Long Island, a couple months ago on this topic, and I said, there's we can keep telling ourselves that things are going to go back to normal as often as we want, but trauma doesn't end because we said it ended. Things don't stop because we say they stop.
Like,
Like they,
And time.
yeah, it's just not how things work.
yeah.
And especially in the United States and Northern European cultures, we are absolutely Northern European Protestants and Catholics are terrible with rituals around grief. Catholics are a little bit better, but Northern European Protestants are like seriously terrible with rituals around grief. And one of the things we really need to learn is to look to other cultures to learn how to embody our grief and embody our trauma and do that. And to figure out what to do it. And one of the reasons I can transition now, if you want me to, one of the reasons we're terrible about grief is because the kind of foundations, and we're terrible about trauma and we're terrible about a lot of things, is that our foundations are built on a faith system where the world is entirely disposable. And one glad morning when this life is over, I'll fly away. And that's kind of it. There's no grief in heaven, et cetera, et cetera. So if you're listening to this and you're like, well, I'm not fucking Christian, fair. I have terrible news for you. Our culture was founded by the Puritans. And because we then never had another state church or another state institution or anything else, we kind of just kept the puritanical mindset as the thing that kept rolling on about what it means to be an American. And we never challenged it with anything else. And so when you think about the American dream, what you're really doing is talking about puritanical theology. So the Puritans, quick history lesson, were folks who came from England in particular, some Scotland, a little bit Wales, but mostly England, to New England. And they conquered slash colonized slash founded, depending on the word that you are pedagogically comfortable with.
Pick
They
the verb that suits you.
pick for where you are in your journey. Um, the colony of Massachusetts essentially really is what this comes down to, and they would eventually become the Commonwealth. And they left because they were being persecuted for not being Church of England. And I'll say like right up front, a lot of us enjoy a whole lot of religious freedom on this planet now. And it's really important to remember that that's not the statement of human history. A lot of people throughout human history and even on the planet right now routinely lose their lives for what they believe. And blood has been shed and continues to be shed. And so just a little pinprick, not being told Merry Christmas is not persecution. So it's something, it may be upset. It may upset you. It's not persecution because no one has lost their lives. And so we are founded by a group of people who were being killed for what they believed. That's the first group of people that said this is what it means to be Americans, were the Puritans, and they didn't even know they were doing it. But they kind of did this. They have 3 things in their theology that are really important to know. The first is that they deeply, deeply believed in doing everything by yourself. That the best hard work, the most genius that you were responsible for, they deeply believed in personal responsibility and in solo work. The second thing that they deeply believed was that rest was for death. Joy was for death. Rest, you could sleep when you died. They are the originators of you can sleep when you're dead. And the third thing that is really core to their theology is that you really don't have any control over whether or not you're going to heaven or not. Their theology was very centered on the fact that God controlled literally everything. And so your responsibility was to work as hard as possible. On the off chance that you were going to get into heaven, you kind of had to earn your way there. So it was this very intense work ethic that you had to do everything by yourself and you could sleep when you're dead. So in modern American parlance, you need to pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. You can sleep when you're dead, and American exceptionalism. That's really what founded on. So this is the 1600s. What they then had the guns and the money and the resources, and eventually they just kept deciding what it meant to be American. Every time new immigrants showed up on the shores, they were the ones with the power and the society set, and people amalgamated into their definition of America. And if you were from an immigrant group, all the way up through the 1920s, where the goal was to hide your heritage, this is the kind of, you're pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. You're sleeping when you're dead. And I'll say a very positive thing about the Puritans is that they deeply believed in literacy. It's one of the reasons we had some of the very first access to education before a lot of other countries did, because they deeply believed that everybody should read the Bible for themselves. So, and I'll say this too, these are crass generalizations. Obviously, theology is nuanced and difficult, but when we look at the legacy, these are the legacies they gave us. And so I love the U.S.
Maybe from my theological background, because I think that we would also say, I grew up in a very Puritan influenced religious cult. So my perception might be skewed, as I often find it is, because I grew up in an alternate reality. But I feel like the high emphasis of rapture or ascension is like, it leads into, we can trash the planet and everything will be fine because we won't be here.
Yeah, and that's a bit of like sleep when you're dead. So yes,
Okay.
that your life, totally agree that not the rapture. The rapture necessarily is really specific to some different things. It didn't show up in all the Puritan stuff. So
totally.
the
But
idea,
I meant that concept of
totally fair.
We're leaving here. This is temporary.
We're leaving here. Yeah. We in fancy theological words that I learned in seminary, that's our eschatology. So it's your theology of the afterlife. And what that looks like. But yeah, the planet will be destroyed. And the dominionism is in there too, where God gave dominion over the earth. Those kind of things are a really big deal. It's why Christians are terrible at environmentalism when we should really be the leaders of it, and all those kind of things. So totally right to bring that up. That's, for me, I need to be better about explaining that, because that's folded into, for me, you'll sleep when you're dead, because the goal is death. Like the goal is to be done here. But yeah, totally trash the planet. You don't need to know anybody else. The goal is to make, all those, there's lots of nuances out of that. But in terms of American culture and what we kind of got, the focus on the afterlife is a really big part of it. Whether you realize it or not, part of being an American is not giving a living shit about what's going on around you, because someday it'll be better. Whether it's after death or you finally get the American dream and you have your 2.5 kids, your white picket fence, and your vegan garden, someday it'll be better. And you have no responsibility necessarily to get it there, in this weird thing of like, you are completely personally responsible for yourself and your own actions, but then you'll get there no matter what. It's this very strange thing that doesn't really square with logic.
A constant earning and proving yourself and denying yourself to get entrance into the party. And once you're in the party, afterlife or life starts. We're not here. It's like a perfect dissociation.
Yep. And it's all those kind, this is why, like, you hear self-made, there's no such thing sociologically or economically as a self-made millionaire. It doesn't
Nope.
exist. You drove on roads that other people paid for. You used an electricity grid that other people paid for. There's no such thing as a self-made anything.
Mhm.
But because we have continually removed community and continually removed embodied presence, which is a particularly Protestant thing. So the other thing too is the Protestant Revolution, Protestant Reformation, spoiler alert, um, is that almost every major Protestant movement has pieces of this. So, and it has pieces of removing our spirit from our bodies and not talking about us as holistic people. So the Catholic Church, the Orthodox movements, they all are much more embodied. Judaism, Islam,
Mhm.
Hinduism, Shintoism are much more embodied than Protestantism, than all the various Protestant movements. And why that matters is that Americans are also not embodied people. We don't know how to hold grief in our own bodies because our ultimate goal is comfort, because our ultimate goal is to just get through here easily until we die. So, but all of that to say, I'll say why we kept the Puritans really quick is, and I'll say this, I love the US Constitution. I think it's beautiful if we treat it as a living document. And a couple things that we got with the Constitution is that we were kind of the first place on the planet to say that God didn't have any say in who we elected as our leader. So yay, big thumbs up for that. That the government could not baptize you into a church for your citizenship. Amazing. Big thumbs up. We love that. And that the government had no right to tell churches how to live their lives. Woohoo, fantastic. On the surface, amazing. We don't want any of those things to crumble. We don't want any of that to go away. But the problem then is there was no other unified anything. There was no other unified cultural anything until maybe you can argue college football in Texas that really took over for anything else. So we just kept, without examining it, without doing anything else, this puritanical mess just kept chugging along as what it meant to be American. So I say when I teach rest and boundaries all the time, you are not exhausted because you're supposed to be. You're exhausted because your culture has programmed you to be. And rest feels lazy because it's countercultural. Stopping feels wrong because it literally goes against your culture. And when people are being countercultural and they know it, there's like a, yeah, fuck yeah, I'll do it, whatever. But if you don't even know you're being countercultural, you're programmed to feel guilty about that. You're programmed to feel weird. And so you have to under a huge part of breaking the self-care industrial complex and a huge part of actually resting and not just lighting a few candles and doing some yoga breathing so because somebody told you once on an Instagram that that would work is acknowledging that you have to rest, and that's going to feel awkward and weird at first.
I can
Find the self-care industrial complex, because that's not a common term in what I've
Sure.
heard.
So it's a little bit of a joke that I call it, but really in the last bunch of years, I've noticed it more and more. So I get the industrial complex phrase literally from the military industrial complex.
Right.
And the way the US military works is that it's so ubiquitous to all of our lives, we don't even notice it. So
Mhm.
that's why I use it for self-care. So the self-care industrial complex is not actually about your rest. It's about making other people money on your exhaustion.
Yeah.
So
No capitalism.
it's capitalism.
Mhm.
It's not about teaching you to do what is right for you. This is toxic wellness industrial complex as well. It's not about teaching you what actually works for you. It's about selling you some snake oil that will fix all of your problems. And one of the issues with that is that, and I usually say here, it's like not about bubble baths, but if bubble baths work for you, fucking rock on. Buy all of the Lush bath bombs that you want, and make sure you carve out intentional time to take bubble baths. Bubble baths, to me, are a time in which I become a human prune, and I sit there and wonder why water can't stay hot for longer. So it's not exactly like part of my rest. It's not part of my rejuvenation. It's not part of me breaking my stress cycle. It's not part of anything else. It's something that a fancy woman on Instagram told me to do once, and I'd feel better. And it usually involves you spending $49.99 to join her membership community, or $65 to buy a candle that smells like her vagina, Gwyneth Paltrow. So like that's kind of the point, is that it's not about actually helping you stop. It's just a fancy way of making you feel more guilty for not stopping.
And that guilt and that shame is so American.
Oh my gosh, we love it. We love it so much because our cultural priority is productivity.
Right.
Our cultural priority is not family, it's not individualism, it's not growth, it's not rest, it's not anything else. And I saw that so, so strongly when I lived in Northern Ireland. That are the American cultural value above all else is productivity.
And getting there by yourself.
Yeah, individual productivity. Yeah, I mean, even you see it on Instagram now, and I'm guilty of doing this. But you talk about it like, guys, well, rest is even productive. Be restful because it's productive. And I'm like, Jesus, what are we even doing? But it's a good baby step. If you can't do it at all, let's start with rest is productive, and then let's start with rest is mandatory. Like let's baby step towards balance. But yeah.
So I have a question for you, and asking for a friend. If you happen to be someone who has been focused on productivity for most of one's life, and I don't know, you wrap KPIs around things like relationships and self care, how can you start to literally like find the things that have meaningful ROI when it comes to self care? Because you put me in a yoga class and I'm going to come out shaking mad.
Yeah.
Like
This
it's
is this is one of those you find what makes you happy and you do it. Start there. So one of the things that makes me deeply, deeply happy is writing fan fiction. I have a ton of fun doing it. It provides absolutely no economic value whatsoever. It is the deepest ROI in my self-care quiver. I bring joy to myself and other people as I write about superheroes falling in love. Cool, let's go. So a huge part of it is what makes you happy? What brings you joy? Joy is restful because it releases, I mean, I'm not a neuroscientist, but I listen to enough of them to know that like a huge part of joy and gratitude and all of these things that we tend to think of as the soft skills are a big part of bringing our hormones into balance, releasing the right things in our brains that balance out the bad things. It's like stress is not bad. Never leaving the stress cycle is what's bad,
right.
And so how do we do that? So the very first thing, figure out what makes you happy and do more of it.
Yeah, Susie, keep reminding me that just because I love opening businesses doesn't mean that I should keep doing it. Okay.
Oh.
Yeah. So you do what makes you
And
happy.
also, I know that not meditating makes you happy.
Yeah,
You'd love to not meditate.
this
I'm a
is
huge fan of not meditating. I don't love yoga. I do it for exercise, not for rest. Massages make me happy. Getting my nails done makes me happy. Getting my hair blow dried really makes me happy. um you know e- Spending time with my husband sometimes makes me happy and sometimes it doesn't, and so we balance that. Not having kids makes me happy, so that's a really big part of my life. We do you kind of start the journey there,
yeah.
and then you remind yourself that there is no destination to this. Every day is a set of decisions that you will like or dislike to lead you to a set of decisions tomorrow that you will like or dislike, and everything is new every morning. You aren't who you were yesterday, and give yourself the permission to be new and make different decisions if you need to.
I just want to let that one settle over the crowd because that was like the big boom. I think we've woken up to the monotony of quarantine for so many days. To re-embrace the idea that every day is a new day seems like a pretty fucking radical idea at this point, because I remember realizing that I hadn't left my house for 6 weeks at one point during the quarantine. Um, so, like, you've made such a beautiful intersection of exhaustion and the industrial complex and self-care, and how they must be there to really break through what our programming is.
Mhm.
How do we create the boundaries that we need to have in order to be able to create, just to find time to try things out and not get it right, or to pull ourselves out of whatever ridiculous spin we've gotten ourselves into by telling ourselves that busy is the best thing I can be.
It's such an excellent question
Thank
with
you.
an answer that will annoy you because it annoys everyone I give it to, which is you just do it.
Yep.
So the first step to me is a mindset step, and it's to remember that going it alone is not impressive, it's imbalance. And that you are not imperative. You are important, but you aren't imperative. And so if you can't step away from your business for a half a day,
Mhm.
we have bigger problems than you're exhausted. We
Mhm.
have we have we have significant problems. Um and so there are some things here. I'm a person of deep faith and have been my whole life. And one of the ways I answer this question is to talk about um one of the ways that Sabbath was taught to me when I was growing up, which was that Sabbath in the particular Jewish tradition that was taught to what that was I was learning from was about a day of reorientation to who you are in the universe. You take sundown to sundown to remember that you are one entity. You are loved and valued and worthy and wanted, but you are one. And you are the created and not the creator. And so you spend 24 hours a week reorienting yourself to the universe. And I've studied a lot of science around rest and theologies, various religions, theologies around rest, of which every single religion has a theology of rest. Nearly everybody has some sort of theology of stopping. The gods either want you to stop or don't want you to stop, depending on who you're talking to. And I've never found a more succinct thing that makes the most sense to me about the importance of stopping. I have to reorient myself to the universe. I have to reorient myself to remember that I am important, but I'm not imperative. And that the work that I am doing, and I mean, I'm a social worker. I have worked in nonprofits. Obviously, now I do kind of like very crunchy, emotional granola type of work and talking about, understanding and equity and kind of things like that. So it's really easy for me to get caught up in the fact where I'm like, but this, like, the world's on fire. We got to go. The world is on fire. We got to go. And like, yes, but you got to take a break. You got to, in the words of Hamilton, you got to run away for the summer and go upstate, or you're going to cheat on your wife and write a dumbass pamphlet. Like, there, you're going to break promises because you're going to forget who you are. You're going to forget who you are fundamentally, and also who you are to the universe. I am not the only person on the planet talking about equity and inclusion. Thank Christ.
Yeah.
I'm not the only one doing the work that I'm doing. And if I start to believe that I am, then all of a sudden I very quickly look like a cult leader.
Yeah. And
So you got to reorient. So that's the first step. So once you reorient, once you commit to reorienting, I am good at it approximately 12% of the time. But, I do it.
Mhm.
You pick the thing you can do. For some folks, especially folks of like multiple children running businesses, which, like, Mazel, I don't know how you do it. You impress the crap out of me. I have no children. I have no kids, no pets, no plants. I keep nothing alive but myself. But you pick maybe 5 minutes a day and you say the shower. The shower is when I'm going to sing a song that grounds me. The shower is when I'm going to blast that audio book of Amanda Gorman's poetry and I'm going to let a poem come over me. The shower is when I'm going to scream because I need to be angry. I'm taking that 7 minutes that I get my shower. The commute is when I'm going to listen to things that bring me joy. Like, I am going to listen to the absolute filthiest romance novel because that brings me rest. So you find the things within the schedule that you can't control that you can, and
Mhm.
start there. My friend Jennifer Bassman is one of my favorite experts on boundaries. She's incredible. She's got a great book called Stop Being a Doormat. And one of the things that she always teaches is that you're going to piss people off with your boundaries, and that's okay because you're not responsible for them and they're not responsible for you. And so know your boundaries, also know they're written in pencil, move them as necessary, but know them. And you're going to piss people off. That's going to happen because humans are kind of codependent on each other. We just kind of are. But keep remembering, you are important, not imperative. You are important, not imperative.
Yeah. And I'm actually I'm having an internal giggle because I let's say 10 years ago, I was working with this phenomenal therapist, and I was getting her into the Franklin Covey system because
Mm.
it helped with prioritization and time management.
Yep.
And she called me about a month after she was in, and she said, "Marie, I hate this thing. Every time I have to change an appointment, which happens, I've got crosses in and out and scribbles everywhere." And I looked at her and I said, "Doc, pencil."
Pencil. Life is written in pencil, man.
And it changed her whole like it changed blew her mind.
Yeah.
But it's so often that we go along in life thinking that everything is in ink. And if I tried it today and it didn't work, then I'm no need to try it again tomorrow. And it's all a practice. I've been doing
Absolutely.
Franklin Covey for 25 years and it's still a practice.
Yep.
But those are the things that when Jim passed and I couldn't see because of the grief,
Mhm.
those intentions that I had written in pencil, those moments I had given to myself to set myself up for care and
Mhm.
future, I achieved everything that we set out to do that year according to the timeline that we had designated
Yeah.
because it was there and I took the time for it. But I can't tell you how many people will push back at me and refuse to take the time to do something as simple as decide where they want to go or how they want their children to experience them.
Yeah. We often think in trauma and in stress, one of the things that we do as humans is assume that all of our choices have been taken from us. And so when you push to somebody and you're like, hey, just decide to do this, they'll be like, well, I can't because I have this and this and this and this. And all that's true, man. All that's true. You do have this and this and this and this. I'm not saying it's not. But within that, what can you do? Within the structure
Mhm.
of your life, what can you do? And so, for example, I have chronic pain. And I will have chronic pain forever. I was thrown from a horse when I was 9. I broke my back. I wasn't given immediate treatment. And I will have compressed vertebra for the rest of my life unless I want to put a bunch of metal spikes in my spine, which is not on my current to-do list. So I live with pain. This means that I cannot sometimes do simple things like laundry. The exact muscles that I need are in so much tension that I can't fold my laundry. So I could sit around and say, oh my God, I'll never be able to do laundry again. Which there are days where I'm just like, I hate this. I can't stand it. Or I can have a really difficult conversation with my husband and say, so you're going to have to do all the laundry.
Yeah.
And he says, okay, because I love you and I don't want you in pain. So then let's trade off and you're going to do something else, which in our family still hasn't really worked because he doesn't trust me to cook. He doesn't trust me to wash dishes because I do it wrong. And all that kind of other stuff. But it's very easy for me to be like, oh, I'll never do this again.
Mhm.
No, within the structures of my life, I can make other choices. And so it's, I'll say this, I get this a lot from parents. They're like, well, you have no idea what it's like to have kids. You are correct because I made the choice not to have them. I don't know what it's like to have kids. I have no idea.
But it doesn't negate your
But
expertise, your
no,
research.
and I know, for example, that there are millions of people who are experts in parenting, and some of them are saying the exact same things that I'm saying,
Mhm.
which is you're still a human person. And if you literally have no time to yourself and you have any sort of agency to ask for help from someone, there's probably somebody in your life who wants to help.
Yeah.
And so if the barrier is your pride
So
or your fear, then you're still
anti-puritanical.
making a choice.
What did you say, Susie?
I said that's so anti-puritanical. Asking for help feels like failure.
It does. And I have a new mom in my life right now who I think her deepest fear is asking for help because she's absolutely been raised in this idea. And I just want to grab her by the face and be like, babe, it's actually strength to ask for help.
And
It's actually acknowledging your place in the universe to ask for help. You are doing great. You're not wired to do this alone, man.
well, and it builds deeper relationships.
Yeah.
It and dear Lord, let me get my hands on that baby. Like, go away long enough so that I can play with this beautiful child that you've made.
Yes, I would like to snuggle a baby. Thank you. And then I would like to give it back to you. So I will see you in approximately 45 minutes, but please go take a shower.
Yeah.
Like, please
Yeah.
go do it. So I think it's how do you build the boundaries? You do it. You decide to do it. You know, there's a great Avett Brothers quote that I use all the time, which is decide what to be and go be it.
And I absolutely love that. And I
That's it.
think, the more we step into what this world is going to need from us as we go into the next phase,
Mhm.
it's going to be a bunch of be it ladies. And I want to, first of all, Dr. Kristen, I want to say thank you so much for
Oh, you're
joining us.
welcome.
You guys, you have to find her. Look her up. She's on all major platforms at Abby, that's ABBEY research. And you can find her at Kristen Nielsen Donnelly, PhD on LinkedIn, or at her website at abby-research.com. And for those of you that need a little extra, like myself, because I'm a little extra and I am okay with that, sh- the Good Doctors are doing a Empathy 101 masterclass on February 24th and 25th. Make the time to be at this event. If we continue to do things the way that we always did them and to continue to move through this world in a way that we expect different results, then we have to be different. We just burned everything to the fucking ground. Build something better than what you had before, because it is your responsibility. It is your world. And you have an opportunity, and it may be just this once, where everything is so ruffled that you can make the kinds of impacts that you want to make, even if that impact is a pruny ass bath. Thank you so much for joining us again on Clutching Our Pearls. We'll see you at the next episode.